This is my third time trying to do this video. Ironically, the one about be perfect. And it's definitely not because the other ones have not been perfect. It just hasn't been the right time, which I think is kind of encapsulates what I feel like this phrase is implying here when Christ says to be perfect. A friend asked me to share my thoughts on be perfect from Matthew 5:48. And I'll just read that just to give this context here. It says, "Be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father which is in heaven is perfect." That's a very challenging aspiration, especially these days as we think about the perfection defined in so many ways around us, whether it's through media of various sorts or even in the lives that we see of people around us, along with the injunction itself and what it seems to mean. But it's really important that you look at the word perfect. It actually means in Greek, the original context that he had it in, it actually means to be whole or complete. And I think that's such a more beautiful way to look at the idea of being perfect. And so I'd like to explore today in this Beauty from Ashes episode, what it means to be perfect. I think that's very appropriate because I think that is in seeing the perfection that already exists in our lives, in the ashes, in the hard things, that we do find beauty. And we can find meaning in the things that are happening around us. To build a little context for this idea of being perfect, I think it's important to go to the first part of the chapter there in Matthew. And he starts it with blessed are a series of attributes. And if you really think about it, none of them are what we would call by the modern standard perfect. The only one that's close is pure in heart. We have blessed are the poor in spirit, blessed are they that mourn, those who hunger and thirst after righteousness, they who do the merciful, peacemakers, pure in heart. Then we have even things that are like those who are persecuted for righteousness' sakes, and the people who revile you and persecute you. I don't know about you, but my earlier idea of perfection in my life was none of these things. It was that my relationships with people were whole and complete and happy and calm. It was we would be able to understand each other. I know, and I feel like we have perfect definition of homes, of families, and I don't think any of them are. Well, many of them are realistic or healthy. And so to examine this idea of being perfect, the Savior in this chapter to me seems like he's saying, "Be perfect in me." As you seek me and your hunger and you thirst after this, you're pure in heart. He gives many instances after it about shining your light. It's talking about keeping up your heart, about not forgiving, about forgiving people, about thanking God, about not putting away your wife for divorcement, and that's an issue in itself. But all of these acknowledge the reality that our relationships are not going to be the modern standard of perfect. In fact, I feel like he acknowledges, like, when it's hard, what is your choice? And if your choice is to try to follow me, you're seeking so to do, my grace will make you complete. So that's one aspect of the word perfect, but I also want to explore a different way of looking at the word perfect in my recent experiences. And I realized that perfection really is this combination of the happy and the sad. It's this completeness and this wholeness. To start off, one example that I've had recently is my son Hiram is going to go serve a mission. And part of me is so sad that he's leaving. So sad. But he is so happy about going. He's like glowing. He's bouncing around the house. And I know that if he chose not to do the mission right now, because I wanted him here, it would not be perfect. It would be worse. And so right now, the net perfection of the sadness mixed with his joy is perfect. It's complete. And so just because an experience is perfect or a situation is perfect, it doesn't mean it's not going to be bittersweet. There's not going to be some of those ashes a minute. Another way to look at that is it's called Collateral Beauty. There's a movie with Hank Smith in it that talks about collateral beauty. And he's going through this really hard thing, and he's challenged by someone to say, well, look for the collateral beauty. A couple other examples of that I've had recently in my life is I have a friend who's just watched her father-in-law pass away. And there was a day when they took time, he had some dementia, and so they took time to be there and be present when he actually had a lucid day right before the end. And she said after he passed that there were so many, she called them God signs there at the time through the journey that just brought her such peace. And so even though she lost this man that she really had a lot of respect for and she cared for deeply, she was able to see that this experience overall was perfect, but it was because there was the sorrow and there was the beauty in it. My daughter Tova recently miscarried, her first, and it was a late miscarriage, about 12 weeks, and the odds of that are very rare. And she's been looking forward to being a mom her whole life. And as I've watched her struggle through this, she has created some really emotional music and poetry. And also just the experience of going there and mourning with them was in a way beautiful. To be there with them and to be feeling that together, the mourning together, it felt complete. It felt in a way the perfect way to handle a situation like that. And it didn't make the situation less ugly and less horrible for her, but we were able to see some collateral beauty in that. Oh, yeah, it's so perfect. On a lot more lighthearted note, I had the idea of a perfect dog, and we were going to get this perfect dog, and I was going to have fun with the kids. And my husband's ideas of the perfect dog was that it would look a certain way and be a certain kind of dog. And so we just kind of moved forward with that mutual kind of shared vision, and we ended up with Cujo. He's a hound dog, and he is not very trainable because he's a hound dog. He wants to go hunt. He doesn't want to stay by the house. He doesn't want to stay with the people. He wants to go and find things to hunt because that's what he is. So we've tried to find other homes for him. We've tried to find different solutions, and nothing's worked out. So the reality is we just have Cujo here with us, and I'm not happy with that. It is not perfect. It is not anything like I hoped it would be. But as I have him here, I realize that we can make a perfection here in my attitude towards him, and as it's become a good part because it makes me go run and go exercise more because I know he needs exercise. So I can see that there can be that beauty from the ashes in that moment. So we have these coexisting opposites that really help make things beautiful. And there's a recent talk by President Uchtdorf, and he in it, not recent, I guess it was a while ago, he was talking about his mom, and his mom had this moment where she was really struggling to find food for her family. They were traveling across Eastern Germany at the time of World War II. There wasn't a lot of food available, so she got off the train and she went to go find food. And she came back, the train that had her 4 children on it had moved, and she couldn't find it. And she despaired, and she was so upset. And she chose to turn that moment to the Lord and prayed. And then she moved forward and she took action, and she found the train, and they were reunited miraculously. And it's a very different experience to have the perfect experience of going from point A to point B and be able to get food and your kids stay there, versus the experience when you move from point A to B by way of C. When she had that experience, it has stuck with President Uchtdorf forever, Harold Uchtdorf, and it's here embedded in his mind and his heart. He still remembers that experience. And so that actually is a more perfect experience. So when Christ says be perfect, I feel like he's saying, be aware and mindful of where I want you to be. Be humble, be teachable, be approachable, and rely on my grace when you do mess up. But be complete and be whole in your experiences. I feel like doing that, to accept the bitter with the sweet in our life, really can bring that sense of completeness and wholeness to us that I feel like he was asking us to seek for when he said, be perfect, even as I am perfect. Be perfect in our intentions, be perfect in our actions. Like really try to align our will with God's. And then in that moment when we do, we will see that his will is to allow for these hard things to happen. These memorable, imperfect, from the modern context, broken, sad, ash-like experiences in our life. But they really can become perfect through Christ, and perfect in our perspective as we learn to accept them, and as we learn to still move forward with hope and still strive to make what we have ownership over, our thoughts and our judgments and our actions, and we can make them align with God. So that's my take on be perfect and how we can look for the perfection that already exists in our lives and learn to enjoy that perfection.